All right, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the workshop of the Board of County Commissioners. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first thing on our agenda is a discussion regarding the change of ownership for 49 Square Ventures property.
Correct. So apparently they sold it back in June, but nobody told us. We haven't been contacted. In August, we got a copy of a letter from CDPHE, Water Quality Control Division, on violations on the property for not doing their required sampling, testing, and reporting. So they got fined another $7,000+ for being delinquent there. And that's in addition to the solid waste division of CDPHE, where they're tens of thousands of dollars delinquent. So I went ahead and had an email chain, as you can tell, with Mr. Everett. He's with the Water Quality Division, but I also copied Ed Smith on everything. He's the Solid Waste Division that oversees that facility. So it did sell. It sold to CLM Composting, I believe it is, a local company here. They transferred our 49 Squares paid that outstanding invoice fine for the Water Quality Division. And the CDPHE transferred their stormwater runoff permit to the new company. So I contacted Ed Smith to see what's going on with the facility and who's doing what, and are they under the any consent orders, because he told me that they're just cleaning up the property and they're not going to operate. So I asked him if they were under the closure post-closure commitment that's part of the solid waste permitting process. But he said that they're just cleaning it up. They're not operating, so they're not required to sign any agreements. So apparently, asking him more questions, they plan on having it cleaned up in a couple of years. So I asked him, well, who's monitoring all this? Because if they don't clean it up, then they do have to sign some consent agreements with CDPHE. If they start operating, they'll have to sign agreements and agree to operate it under CDPHE's guidelines. So anyway, that's where that all stands. As far as we're concerned, we hold the Certificate of Designation to 49 Squares. 49 Squares no longer owns it or operates it. The current status we have is that nobody's going to operate it. So I would like to revoke that CD on that property, because if anybody ever does want to operate it, it's never been compliant with the state. So I don't think we would want to entertain that until it is completely and officially cleaned up or operating under the right parameters or closed appropriately. Some disposition where we can start over basically before we want to issue any kind of certificate of designation as a solid waste operation. And I don't think we need to give the new owners notice, because they obviously didn't contact us in 6 months. And if they're not operating, then they don't need this certificate of designation on that property.
So what the statutes say, CRS 30-20-112 talks about revocations of these certificates, and it says the governing body having jurisdiction, that would be this board in this case, after reasonable notice and public hearing, shall temporarily suspend or revoke a certificate of designation that has been granted by it for a failure of a site and facility to comply with all applicable laws, resolutions, and ordinances, or to comply with the provisions of this part, the Solid Waste Act. And so that would be the process if you guys wanted to revoke that we would have to go through. Now, obviously, if that kind of a public hearing was held, we would want to hear evidence as to what ways 49 Squares failed to comply, and then this board could make its decision. I guess we could certainly have the hearing and go ahead and revoke this. I guess at the same time, if they're not operating at this point in time, it really just depends on what the local authorities say about what was or what the authorities say about what was violated and what wasn't. And I think in an ideal world, somebody from CDPHE would appear at a public hearing like this and testify as to what was violated. Because, in essence, they're the experts. They're the ones that oversee the day-to-day at 49 Squares. And so that's the legal mechanism to revoke it.
So this came before us, I think, in 2019 originally.
2019 and 2020.
And they were out of compliance, and I think we had I think we had one public hearing, and we had a lot of conversations back and forth with the Bradshaws and CDPHE.
Yeah.
Out of compliance, I think if my memory serves me correctly, one was they didn't have their water quality testing complete, and then they didn't have the, after that, the continuation of the water quality as it pertained to the permit in place. I think we gave them, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we gave them 6 months. It came back to us again. We gave them another 6 months, and we said at that point in time, if you are not compliant, that we would revoke this. I would have to go back and look at those, but I want to say that was in 2019.
That's pretty close to it, yeah. We met off and on for a year.
It was throughout the whole year. And here again, this same song and dance that we hear today is that we're going to sell it, we have a buyer, so on and so forth, and they never were able to comply with the water quality division, I guess, of the state, or through CDPHE.
Well, and the bigger issue is they are not current agreement, and they have over 50,000 in outstanding fines to CDPHE dating back to 2012.
So,
Which obviously
to an extent,
Yes.
that's relevant, and to an extent, it's not. What they've got worked out with CDPHE may not be relevant for our purposes. They certainly can't be out of compliance, and if there's evidence that they are out of compliance with the Solid Waste Act, then that's something that we could do. That's something we could hang our hats on to revoke their certificate. Now, if they've got some kind of an arrangement with CDPHE, we'd have to hear more about that, I think, from CDPHE before we could revoke based on outstanding fines to CDPHE.
So is this certificate transferable? I guess that's my first question.
How does statute address that? Transfer of ownership, and
I
we don't
didn't
know
think
how
they
they're
would
going to operate or
transfer.
not operate.
I'm not sure that the statutes deal with transferability one way or the other. I think that these permits, generally, the way I read them in the statute, are to operate a solid waste facility. And I don't know that it really deals with owners as much as, hey, you can do this at this site. But regardless, I think we've got a situation where, at least from what Don represented to us, it sounds like they're out of compliance with several provisions of the Solid Waste Act.
Right.
And so, based on that, if this is something that this board wants to revoke, what I would suggest is that we provide notice to the new owners, that we have a public hearing. Certainly the statute talks about a reasonable amount of time. I think that probably 4 weeks would be more than enough time. Let the owners know, and then you guys can certainly can certainly hear it. And I think the advantage of doing this in a public hearing too is you can hear from the new owners and hear where they're at, perhaps hear from CDPHE, and then make a decision what you
My
guys
only
want to do.
concern with looking at this, do you see the name on the?
I do.
Associated with CDPHE?
I do.
Which is the same situation that we have, who, he's gonna disappear and provide nothing. The same name.
But
Same
that's,
respect.
we have a new owner, correct, Don? I mean, there is a new owner of this
There's a
company.
new owner.
And CDPHE has corresponded with them? I mean, they've been in touch with this owner. So
Right.
there is a new owner now. That, I think, is crystal clear.
The problem I have is if CDPHE doesn't make them sign any agreements, then
It
they're
could
just
sit
out there
there.
randomly. And in 2022, they did have another fire because of their spontaneous combustion of their compost. At the time, they had a permanent operator on site just to maintain and turn their piles. He quit, and as of all
so I
of this
think-
year, there's nobody operating that.
I think to an extent, though, this is all information that would come out at a public hearing and should come out at a public hearing if that's the direction you guys want to go. I mean, that's what has to be had in order to revoke this thing. I mean, the statute's pretty clear.
Well, then, I mean, I've dealt with this for a long time, and it has never been in compliance
Nope.
since I started in 2019.
Well, so it sounds like
We
the
gave
board,
them a year, so.
sounds like the board wants to
I
schedule a
would-
public
or-
hearing.
I mean, I'm only one vote here, but I would say let's set it up for a public hearing and see what they're gonna do. If they're gonna clean it up, then they don't need this permit anyway.
Correct.
If they're just gonna
If they're
clean it
not
up,
operating, they don't need
which is
this.
fine.
And if they are operating, then they better start signing agreements and get compliant.
Travis, can you run back on those papers you had there before?
Do you have a specific page you want to look at?
Yeah, just keep going for a minute. Let me see something.
That's with the solid waste representative, and it also includes a water quality control division when it gets to Mr. Everett.
I don't know, what was that?
I wanna say we went and viewed that after that fire in 2022, didn't we, Ken? Didn't we?
I think you might have gone over with Spratlin.
Yeah. So we
Of course, they spread out the pile and they had it watered down at their monitoring wells, so those tests probably didn't get taken there.
I guess I hear what you're saying. If they're not gonna be conducting any business other than just cleanup, they don't need a permit anyway.
Correct.
So,
But I don't think that's the issue. I mean, I think the issue is
They're
the
out of
permit can be
compliance.
revoked because they're out of
out of
compliance.
compliant is the issue.
That's the issue.
Right.
I think it's all of the above. From CDPHE, they're not even trying to get anything agreed to in writing. They just have a verbal that's gonna get cleaned up, and they just said, okay.
But we don't want a certificate following this land purchase.
I don't recommend it at all.
I don't know where it was. I saw that.
What did it refer to, Gerald? I might be able to help you.
Well, somewhere along in there, in one of those sheets, as he was running by it earlier, it said that they could, and maybe I didn't read it right because we were moving through it real fast, but it said something about they could bring on like 30 I was thinking it said 30,000 yards of material yet on site. Maybe, I mean, I was just reading it real fast.
Right.
It was going by there.
Under their current, I guess, consent order from solid waste, they cannot receive materials. They can only remove material. But now that,
Yeah, but if there's nobody watching them, how you can?
well, that's,
Then they're
That's
operating, that's. and
the
they're
problem.
non-compliant.
If nobody's even there and they're under no agreements with CDPHE, I don't even know that they know they can't receive material. It took me that many emails to get anybody first to tell me that it's sold and what the status was.
Well, if it's sold and these people are out of business, I don't see what the big deal is about taking their, the permit's not any good to anybody else,
I would
Especially if
not,
they're only
unless
cleaning
we
it up.
transfer it.
So it
I think
sounds
we ought to
like a
just set a
direction-
public hearing
set
and
up a
do
public
it.
hearing
I mean,
and
that's
we'll-
easy enough.
For their revocation of the permit. Agreed?
Yeah.
Okay. There's our direction.
okay.
Set up a public hearing.
I'll set up that public notice and we'll send it, certify mail it to the address for the new owners,
Great.
as well as CDPHE.
Perfect.
Okay.
I guess we'll cover both water quality and solid waste. They can decide if they're both showing up or not showing up or being represented, but we'll give them the Zoom link option. Obviously, they're both in Denver.
Well, like you said, if they're just cleaning it up, it doesn't matter. They don't need a permit to operate. So,
Right.
okay. Sounds good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Shane, come on down. We're gonna have a discussion on another vehicle.
So this first one is where we're at for the budget for the year. So technically, the emergency manager pickup should have been a grant, and then the sheriff's transport came out of the sheriff's budget. So we're well below that, but this is worst case. If everything came out of vehicle replacement, we're at 342,000. We budgeted 400,000 for this year. And I'm just trying to get the last vehicle in. We're not really budgeting for anything for next year, so just trying to get the last vehicle in for this year. It's would go to the road department, replace this 3-20 pickup. It's a 2006 F-250. Has about 110,000 miles on it, but well over the years of replacement. And it would go to one of the foremen, and then one of the foreman's pickups would move into a yard unit. So it's kind of just that's it.
Our local guys don't bid anything anymore?
No, they can't even get pickups anymore, really. They can, hopefully, starting next year, which we're not getting anything, but we'll be able to go back into the basically being able to purchase them from hopefully one of our locals, but the government bid stuff has basically gone away in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And so now you're back to just finding, these are big dealerships that will give you MSRP. Everyone else is still doing 10,000 over MSRP on all their vehicles. So we're just looking for the big dealerships that'll still do MSRP on their pickups, and that's where these lower price tags come in, which is still not a lower price tag, but it's still, but it's lower than a lot of the others. You know, Morehearts had bid us this pickup, and they're 5,000 over for the same pickup. So it's hard.
Yeah, Dodge is not gonna compete with Chevy or Ford.
No.
Ever. They have never been able to do it. Or just opposite of what I
Yeah.
said. Ford.
Chevy and Ford.
Chevy have never been able to compete with Dodge.
Yeah. And this is keeping us, we'll get somewhat behind next year, not really replacing any vehicles, but what do you do when you don't have the money? So we're in a pretty good spot, realistically, with our fleet. But this is, I could get this one purchased and get the check cut before the end of the year, get it on this year's budget cycle, and then go get it picked up after the first of the year. It's that easy.
I don't have any
That's
questions.
fine.
I don't. You got by pretty easy today.
Yeah, I did. I'm gonna get out of here while I'm still on the.
I do have one question. 'Cause
I knew it.
Well, because I wasn't going to let you go. I just saw you get up. So I was going to say, just sit back down. So you did get that Dolores truck back to those guys?
I did, yes.
Okay, thank
We
you.
delivered it 2 weeks ago, I think. So delivered it to town hall and gave them the keys and the title, and off they went.
Okay, very good. Appreciate that.
That was it.
I won't be getting phone calls.
No more phone calls. It's there.
Okay,
And we tried to deliver it as clean and nice as we could, so there was no complaining about it.
appreciate it. I don't have any other questions.
Can I leave now?
Well, I don't know. Might
Get
have
up,
something
get up
else
this
come
time,
up.
you run.
I know. Grab my jacket on the way out.
You're
Yeah.
good to go.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. All right, Mr. Dobry, we'll make it easy on you too. Maybe. We'll see.
Good afternoon. I am bringing a contract for a software program called AmpliFund that will help us upgrade and provide additional oversight for grants for the county. That's one of the things we've kind of identified is that we haven't had a lot of great oversight over all of the departments and all the grants. This will be one system. Everyone will be able to have their grants will kind of live in here. This will be where all the documents live. This will be where if someone wants to work with me and collaborate to help write it. But the biggest benefit for the county is going to be in providing oversight and making sure that we, the administration, know that we are, that all the terms of the grants are being applied or being fulfilled. So those are the real benefits. I think there's some other benefits. It integrates with Cassell, so there'll be some time savings through finance to kind of keep things tracked appropriately. If you look at the contract page, the reason it's written as a one-year subscription and then with the options is because for things over 4 years, they keep a flat rate. If we had just been year to year, they would have it would have increased 5% per year. Because of, and Jim can explain this a little better for me, but because of obviously we can't sign multi-year contracts like that, but they are willing to honor that as an option and give us basically the longer term pricing.
So I guess I'll ask you a question, Mr. IT. How does this, I mean, what are we going to get rid of, or did we have anything, or is this just new software to make it so that we are better tracking and more compliant with everything that we are doing?
That is correct, the latter. We do not have anything currently that does anything remotely close to this. All of our kind of everybody's been off on their own, doing their own thing, and so we'll have folders with Excel spreadsheets and documents, and there's just no real way to bring it in together. So we looked real hard at this software. I spent quite a bit of time researching it, talking to the people. I was very clear with them on how Tabor works, so that's why you see the contract written the way it is. So they were able to give us the long-term pricing based upon short-term contracts. And Robert and I spent a lot of time talking about this, and we're pretty sure that it'll pretty much pay for itself. And I had budgeted for it because I knew it was coming. So it was added in to the next year's budget.
So if it's gonna pay for itself, we don't have to write any checks?
Well, not quite that simple.
We'll pay for it out of indirect costs
That's
received in grants.
Indirect
So
costs.
that's what we're going to make sure that which is one of the kind of compliance issues that we're trying to track, is make sure that we are receiving the appropriate amount of indirect costs for all the grants. So in that additional oversight, we will be able to make sure that we capture the cost of it going forward.
So I will tell you two guys something, that since Travis and I think Mr. Dobry here have been trying to track some of these grants with the recent change of events that we've had here in the county, it's been tough. Because
That's
yeah.
we can't,
I mean, we've got a lot of departments writing grants at
been
one
a
time.
struggle.
And we've got to,
and we haven't been able to get
yeah.
And still.
all of the
And
stuff
it's
that we need.
researching emails to try to find some of them grants because with the communications, and it's just been, it's been crazy.
So basically 34,000 for the first year, and then we should be able to pay for that through the indirect costs.
Through the indirect costs,
Through the
exactly.
grants that we
Yeah.
already have.
Yeah, and about
And will receive.
of that, for that first year, the 16.5 is implementation costs. So that's the training for everybody here, as well as and they'll also be available for calls and questions. As the way I kind of envision it is, I will be the main point of contact. I will know the most about the software, and while there will be training for other people who use it, I will be doing most of the training, so I will be able to kind of help and be the first point of contact before we have to reach out to them in the future as well.
Question?
No.
Comments? I mean, as bad as I hate to see the cost of that, I know that specifically where we're at right now, that grant funding, we're going to have to get even more aggressive than we have been, specifically because funding is going taxes
Sideways.
away.
Yeah.
It is.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
getting less and less all the time. It's getting harder and harder to fund what we have. So, yeah, software is gee,
Yeah.
Yeah. I know.
expensive deal, but okay. All right, thank you guys.
Appreciate it.
All right. Discussion regarding and presenting a public safety sales tax for the 2024 ballot. Travis.
So in your packet, there is a draft resolution and language. Obviously, this is from previous. However, due to our property tax revenues decreasing, Initiative 50 might be on the ballot next year, which is going to further reduce our revenues. We've talked about this. We've worked really hard with other stakeholders, League of Women Voters, the state revenue retired director. We just wanted to put it in front of the commissioners to see if this is something that you would like for us to move forward on. If it is, then we can go down through a path, which you should have an outline in front of you. Obviously, some of those topics have changed, but how you gentlemen want to move forward with it?
Given our decreasing revenues from Kinder Morgan and also the impacts of this legislature is going to have on us in reduced property taxes, I don't see any other way forward without some real severe cuts.
And I would agree. I mean, the last thing that we want to do is you look at taxes and property taxes. We're paying we're not paying the lion's share. We're paying all the share of everything right now, of every service. And the people that come to here and use these, and I'm talking roads, jail, all of the services are not paying anything. And that's why we struggled so bad in this county. We're not like Weld County that doesn't have a property tax, but they are so rich in oil and gas that they have more money than they basically can utilize. And they do very well without a sales tax. However, we're not in the same situation. So I'm like Kent, Commissioner Lindsay, that, you know, I think we have to put the question out there, because we've already made cuts this year. And, you know.
Next
with-
year's not
with-
looking any better.
With another $450 to $500,000 with this last legislative session that they just took out of our revenue, I don't see how we're gonna be able
I don't either.
to get along. I mean, you know, when you think about it, we get about 16.5 million in property taxes. I think that's what our current budget is. Now, you have to realize that social services works off a mill levy, and public health is basically a pass-through other than $1.50 per person, but two departments take up 2/3 of this entire county budget, and that's road and bridge and the sheriff's department. Everything else operates on about $3.2 million. We run the entire county on that, which is very lean. We have to put it out there and ask, and there's never a good time to ask. But I think the education that we need to do is to let everybody know the difference between a property tax and a sales tax, and that you actually can have a choice in whether you purchase something that sales tax applies. So if we do the education properly, I think that we can show the people what our needs are. So I would agree with Commissioner Lundy.
Gerald?
Oh, I agree. I think we have to ask. And if they don't want it, then basically the services are gonna change that's available. And it's gonna affect people, and the fact that Kinder Morgan's keeps going down and stuff, I think we have to put that all out there, that's in order to make up for that. If they want services to remain the same, we're gonna have to do something, because it's not gonna, we're gonna keep losing every year, because they basically will probably keep declining.
Diminishing.
And I think that fact has been out there for a long time, that at some point it was going to happen. And it's finally coming upon us, probably sooner than we wanted it to, but it's going to happen. You know, whether it's in the next few years, at some point, it's going to really decrease. And when they were paying 50% of the taxes in this county, well, that's a lot.
It's hard to take that big of a revenue cut and make it work.
Yeah, because when you have one taxpayer paying that much money, when they start declining, it's going to have to change. I mean, it's going to have to change, or our services are going to have to change, one or the other. And people are going to have to decide what
And-
they want.
And we have made some significant cuts and changes. I mean, we've done a lot with our fleets. We've done a lot with things internally. We have made changes already.
Well, and the whole fact is, people are going to have to look at, over the last couple of years, what we pulled $1 million out of reserve both the last 2 years to function as we are now.
We
And
can't
we've-
sustain
and
that.
plus with the cuts, besides that, so people are going to have to decide what they want to do, what they want here, in this county, and I think we have to ask them,
Yep.
not just take it away from them without a choice. We got to give them a choice.
Yep.
You either want to have a sales tax and keep your services up, or we're going to not have a sales tax, and as revenues decline, services will decline. That's all the choices we have.
Right.
And I think we have to put that out there and let them decide, the voter decide what they want to do.
You know, something as I was reading back and I think in the comprehensive plan that you guys developed in 98 or 99, whatever that was, you know, a sales tax was.
It was written in there to be
written in
proposed.
there at that point in time to be proposed at a 1%. basically just what we're proposing here as a public safety sales tax. Now, the percentage is going to change, obviously, but even 25 years ago, they could see this writing on the wall, and I realize that nobody wants to do this, but the time has come, just like you said, Commissioner Copenhaver. I don't, next year's going to be even more. That's $50 and 10 ice cream cones.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's where we're at, and I think the direction is to move forward. Obviously, we'll work with Ian.
And so along those lines, I mean, Travis and I have talked pretty extensively about a path forward and what that path may be. I mean, certainly from my perspective, and this isn't even legal advice as it is just looking at the situation and looking at what we're going to be asking for, I think the more specific we can be in the resolution about what it is that we're using this tax for, who's going to benefit from this tax, how much this tax is going to raise, how long this tax is going to last, those are all questions that we need to answer. And so what I suggested, Travis, was, put this on a series of workshops moving forward and address a specific question every workshop. I think that in my head where it would make sense to start would be bringing in public safety organizations in this county, because obviously this sales tax could conceivably benefit a variety of different organizations. Now, if you guys just want to limit it to the sheriff, we can do that, and then we don't even have to do that. But I guess what we need is a roadmap to move forward and a path forward. Because
So the roadmap that I am going to talk about, we had this conversation the last time we were even bringing this up,
Right.
is I would like to limit it to just basically like what Montrose County did. I've looked at theirs. I've had a lot of conversations with those commissioners up there. This would be, and what it basically delineates in the comprehensive plan is that this public safety sales tax would be to our law enforcement, our DA, anything that's with law enforcement and road and bridge. And that comprehensive plan is pretty specific of how it's delineated in there. And we can talk about that. We can bring that back up and see what you guys think about that too. But you're probably more familiar with it than anybody.
I mean, we foresaw that, like you said, 20-some years ago. And our needs, not wants, keep increasing every year, but yet our revenues are decreasing. And it's hard it's been good for us to find these, I guess, soft targets to hit, but we're kind of out of targets now and what to cut. The next round of cuts will be real serious. We'll see things going away.
yeah, I just want to see where we lay it. Let's go.
But I think we've got this sort of a roadmap here, what needs to be discussed, and I think it's very good. First of all, we need to identify who's going to be funded by this. And I know everybody will want a piece of the action before we're done.
Well, we'd actually brought the fire departments in last time, and
So I'm having Travis highlight what we talked about last time. We talked about the sheriff's office, the regional dispatch center, the drug task force, the district attorney's office, the judicial district, the coroner's office, and then we talked about local fire protection districts and any other entity. So are we suggesting at this point
I would
we
take
want to limit that?
I would
What do we
take
want
the
to limit it to?
fire districts out because they said they had enough money to do
Okay, so
what they needed to do.
So remove fire districts. I guess, would you want to remove this language, any other public entity dedicated to providing services related to public safety? What about public health and emergency management?
I think emergency management should be in there,
Okay.
but I'm not sure public health
Yeah,
should
I
be in
don't
there.
think public health should be in there.
Okay. So really what we'd be looking at would be, what about the regional dispatch center?
Yeah, I mean, that's,
Yeah.
I would leave that in.
I think
That's-
because that's all part of emergency services. Without the dispatch center, nothing can
You don't
happen.
know where.
It
to-
is
you don't know
interesting
where
though,
to
because
apply
we
it.
already have the E911 surcharge that goes to benefit the dispatch center. So do we want to double it up with this public safety sales tax? I mean, these are,
Well,
That's a
here's,
good question.
here's
That's a
the
good
deal,
point.
because right now, what they're telling us, and when you look at their budget, if everything has got to be on a replacement schedule of 3 to 5 years,
And that's what
there's
that,
not enough money in that fund right now to,
yeah.
well, we
to fund
also funded the dispatch center to the tune of 42,000?
Roughly, yeah.
And plus our E911 account buys the equipment. And that's just the county's percentage of the dispatch center. There's other agencies that pay into it, like the city of Cortez right now pays just a little bit more than we do.
Yep. Okay, so we leave that, the
Sorry.
drug task force, we leave that?
Yes, to me,
well, to me, it's law enforcement.
right. It's
So
still in there.
that's why I'm going to associate it as being left in it.
And these agencies, these emergency agencies, they're gonna have to identify in there what their needs are.
So what about the local judicial district? I mean, there we'd be talking about
So,
court
think-
security.
You know, I think you'd be better off, I don't know.
No, go ahead, finish.
Yeah, no, I think you should, because I mean, this
We
is
have to
just,
have
these are
this
just questions that
I
you
think
guys have to
I think you'd be
answer.
better off if you just put in there that this is including the sheriff's office, the regional dispatch center, and to provide services related to, and those offices providing services related to public safety. Because otherwise, how you gonna divide this up?
Right.
Well, I
I
think
mean,
that's really,
I think the public safety thing is a big thing we have to push them.
yeah, it's really how you guys want to package this. I mean, that's the question. Legally, you could do, I mean, it's pretty broad. You
I
can
think-
do it however, it's just
I think
how do you
we
want to
I think
package
we
this
would be
thing?
better keeping it broad and just saying that those services related to related to public safety, the sheriff's offices, the drug task force, and those services related to public safety, not,
Okay, yeah.
rather than trying to delineate all these different names.
too specific.
Because those are all have to do with public safety.
And the reason that's important to narrowly scope this is the stakeholders that we're gonna have to get involved, the sheriff, coroner, district attorney's office, emergency management. So we kinda need it narrowed down to what you gentlemen are wanting so that we know who to reach out and find out what are your needs.
I mean, we don't need to do it that way. I mean, I think there may be some benefit in identifying to voters exactly what it is that they're voting to fund. But, you know, I mean, this can be as broad or as narrow as you guys want it. And, you know, and then, I mean, it's just a matter of how are you gonna garner support from the folks we are funding to try to promote this thing and push it through. And so legally,
No, I get it,
Yeah.
but, I mean, if you look at what happened with Montrose over the, what was it, last week? You know, they had theirs broad, and now they're in a similar situation of, it was so broad, you need to
Specifics.
narrow it down.
it's just what's the best way to get it passed? I mean, that's really, I mean, if that's the objective, how do we tailor this language in a way that's gonna be best suited to get it passed? And that's up to you guys, how you wanna package this, market this, structure this, schedule this. I mean, there's a lot of big questions out there. But certainly starting with, well, who's gonna be involved?
We can't market this. We can't spend a dime.
You can't spend money,
Yeah.
but you
We
certainly
can
can talk, and I think that,
Right.
I mean, I think that's a critical component of all this.
Right, we just can't spend funds. Right.
I mean, I think if you were gonna name all of these different entities in there, you should actually say, well, 50% is gonna go to the sheriff, this amount's going to this, that amount's going to that. If you're gonna name all these
Yep.
things, then you better put a percent that's gonna go to each one of them.
And I think that was a discussion that Travis and I had. I mean, if we want to do it specifically, then my thought would be bring these agencies in, let them talk about their needs, and then figure out how you're gonna divvy it based on that, if you wanna do it that way. I mean, otherwise, you can do it very broad, and then if it passes after the fact, you have those conversations. I don't know that, I'm not suggesting one way or the other, I'm just throwing the options out there.
But I think, you know,
You know, as I go back and I'm going by memory now, I'll have to pull it back up, but I think in that comp plan, they said split it 50-50, half to the road and bridge and half went to the sheriff's department. And it was that simple.
Well, but this can't go to the road department, because this is a public safety sales tax. This is not a general.
It actually can, because
Not a-
public safety, that's how it was passed in Montrose, because the roads, keeping the roads better is
So I-
public safety.
I think we need to go back and pay close attention, because Montrose has a general sales tax and they have a public safety sales tax, is my understanding. And the public safety sales tax by statute, I don't think it can go to roads. I think the general sales tax can, but by statute, the public safety sales tax has to go to public safety
Well,
entities.
We'll look at it.
Yeah, let's find
And-
that
yeah,
out.
let's find out
That's,
for
I'm,
sure.
I'm almost certain. I am certain.
And I think Travis, down here on number 3, the rate, but first we have to identify the needs.
Yeah, first we need to identify who
Right.
we're gonna,
And figure out some way to find some way to figure out what our needs was and how that translates into what kind of percentage rate.
so maybe the first question is who? And maybe we
Right.
put that on the agenda next week for the workshop. I
Yeah,
mean, maybe
For the
that's the
who.
first, the who.
yeah, okay.
I'm not coming next week.
I think you meant the week after, sir.
The week
The
after.
week after, yeah.
We'll be
I'll
here.
come that week.
They all run together.
For 2 weeks.
Yeah,
2 weeks,
Whatever.
yeah.
A couple weeks,
2 weeks,
yeah.
yeah.
We
We're
thought
getting,
you were coming next week.
we're getting
That's why we
close.
did this.
It actually will be,
And Jim
it
got
actually
yelled
will be
at
the
for just
8th.
answering his phone.
Because the first is New Year's. It actually will be
And I
3
did
weeks,
too.
because the first is New Year's.
So it'll be 3 weeks. That'll give them time to really gather up, won't it?
Correct.
All right. First workshop is who?
The who,
The who, yeah.
got it, the who. So,
You got that, EM?
Yes, sir.
Panic 1?
Whatever you want.
Okay,
I'm in.
all right.
all right. Anything else other than the who?
You may want to review our survey results from last year.
Yeah, I've actually been looking at them.
There was some real specifics.
A lot of it had, and I think if you've looked at them too, a lot of them had a lot of things to do with schools that have nothing to do with us.
Right.
So,
Well, and so, I mean, schools obviously is a different thing, but I mean, you know, there is the possibility of a general sales tax too. I mean, we talked about that previously. I mean, what this contemplates is a public safety sales tax, and that's a different thing than a general sales tax.
In looking at past presentations of sales tax and those that have failed and succeeded,
Yep.
transparency is very important. What are you going to spend this money for? And we have to,
when
we
it
have to
goes
go
into
down a.
general,
Yeah,
it's
it's just
too
like-
general.
Yeah, you're just throwing money in the air.
So I think this way it's very specific in what we're trying to do.
And I'm just looking right now at public safety improvements and what qualifies for a public safety sales tax. And a public safety organization, and I'm just gonna quote from the statute, means a law enforcement agency or office, a district attorney's office, a judicial district, a coroner's office, a fire protection district, a fire department, or any other public entity dedicated to providing services relating to public safety, public health, or emergency management. So
Which
that's,
is kind of
broad.
depicted on that.
Yep.
That's really
Then we
broad.
have to.
But I-
we have
but
to
I-
put numbers
when
to
I read,
the
when I read that, I do not think that the road department qualifies there.
Okay, well, maybe I
So,
was
yeah.
incorrect. and-
Yeah, I just wanted to
Something else.
clarify, yep.
We've got 5 fire districts, right? 5 or 4?
Well,
5 districts?
6 is Toyac
They're
is,
not a district.
no, I guess they're not. So, yeah, you're right.
5 districts. We've got a hospital district with an ambulance service. I mean, the list is gonna get big.
That's why I say, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah,
we
you gotta
talked
narrow it
about it
down.
last time, and it's just not, they basically said they didn't need anything, so we move forward with what we know our county needs are.
Right.
As bad as I hate to say that, but
Yeah, a lot of them already have mill levies, so.
Yeah.
Double dipping, so.
yeah, they all have a mill levy because they are all special districts,
Yeah.
all of them. They're all special districts. Okay, the who.
All right,
Anything else, gentlemen?
yeah. Let's
All
sing
right.
one of their songs is Don't Get Fooled Again.
We have come to the end of our agenda, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.